Picture this: a city alive with laughter, trade, and ambition. Merchants shouting in the forum, bakers pulling loaves from their ovens, children chasing each other down sunlit streets. And above it all, looming silently, a mountain that everyone thought was just a mountain. But it wasn't. It was a ticking time bomb. On a single day in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius awoke with a fury that no one could have imagined. By the time it was done, Pompeii, one of Rome's brightest jewels, had vanished beneath a storm of fire and ash. This is not just a story about destruction. It is about people, fathers, mothers, lovers, merchants, slaves, and children, caught in one of history's most terrifying disasters. Today, we step back into their world. We will walk their streets, sit in their houses, and live through their final hours, until time itself stopped. Before the fire, before the ash, before history turned this place into a frozen tomb, Pompeii was alive. And not just alive, but thriving, buzzing, pulsing with the chaotic, colorful energy of a Roman city at its peak. Picture this: the year is 79 AD. The empire stretches from the misty isles of Britain to the burning sands of Egypt. Rome is at the height of its power, and Pompeii, though small compared to Rome itself, is no backwater. It's a jewel on the Bay of Naples, a vacation spot for senators, generals, and wealthy merchants. The shadow of Mount Vesuvius rises quietly in the background, just another landmark, not yet the monster it's about to become. The streets are alive with sound. Wooden cartwheels clatter over stone paving. Market sellers shout over one another, their stalls overflowing with olives, figs, garum fish sauce, and exotic goods hauled in by ships from across the Mediterranean. Children chase each other down alleyways. In the air hangs a rich cocktail of smells: fresh bread from the bakeries, incense curling out of temples, and yes, the less glamorous scent of the open sewers running beside the roads. Step into a Roman domus, a wealthy household. Marble floors, bright frescoes covering every wall with scenes of gods, myths, and sometimes surprisingly risque artwork. Slaves rush about carrying amphorae of wine, while in the peristyle garden, fountains splash gently. Wealthy women recline on couches, hair styled with imported pins, while philosophers and poets debate in shaded courtyards. Pompeii was not just a place to live, it was a place to show off. But it wasn't all luxury. Just outside the grand villas were the bustling taverns, bakeries, and brothels that served the everyday citizens. For every senator's mansion, there were rows of cramped apartments, insulae, where working-class families crowded into small rooms. Fishermen hauled in their catches at dawn. Craftsmen hammered bronze, blew glass, and stitched sandals. In the amphitheater, crowds cheered gladiators spilling blood in the sand. Pompeii was a city of contrasts, of wealth and poverty, decadence and desperation, laughter and violence. And it was diverse. Archaeology shows Syrians, Greeks, Africans, Jews. People from all corners of the empire lived here. You could walk down a single street and hear half a dozen languages. In the baths, citizens of every class rubbed shoulders, literally, as they soaked in hot pools or cooled off under marble fountains. At night, taverns glowed with lamplight. Musicians played flutes and lyres while dice clattered on wooden tables. Lovers slipped into shadowed gardens. Priests lit candles before household gods, whispering prayers for fortune and fertility. Life in Pompeii was raw, vivid, and deeply human. And through it all, looming silently above them, Vesuvius. Most had forgotten it was even a volcano. To the people of Pompeii, it was simply part of the landscape, its slopes covered with vineyards producing some of the finest wine in Italy. Farmers worked the soil, never realizing how deadly the mountain's fertility truly was. No one knew that beneath those peaceful vineyards, magma was stirring. That pressure was building. That time was running out. The city thrived, blissfully unaware that within a single day, its streets, its people, its laughter, and its life would be swallowed whole. Pompeii, in its final summer, was a city at its peak and on the edge of disaster. The story of Pompeii's end didn't begin on that fateful day in 79 AD. The warning signs had been rumbling beneath the soil for decades, signs the people of Pompeii noticed but never truly understood. In 62 AD, a violent earthquake shook the entire Bay of Naples. Temples crumbled, houses split, statues of gods toppled from their pedestals. In Pompeii, whole districts were reduced to rubble. To the people, it was terrifying, yes, but not unprecedented. Earthquakes were known in Italy. They told themselves it was just the earth stretching, nothing more. Repairs began slowly. Wealthy families rebuilt their villas with even grander frescoes, richer mosaics, more luxurious gardens. They thought, the gods are angry, but they are also forgiving. Yet the earth didn't stop. Smaller tremors continued in the years after. Cups rattled on tables, roof tiles clattered, walls cracked again and again. It was a reminder, like a whisper, that something deep below had not gone back to sleep. Animals seemed to sense more than humans. Dogs barked without reason, refusing to eat. Birds flew erratically, sometimes abandoning nests entirely. Farmers noticed wells turning sour, the water tasting strange, sometimes warm as if cooked from below. People laughed nervously, dismissing these omens. After all, what else could they do? In their world, disasters came from the gods. If the earth shook, Jupiter was restless. If fire burst from the ground, Vulcan, the god of fire, was working his forge. To them, Vesuvius was no volcano. It was simply a mountain, cloaked in vineyards, a friend that gave them fertile soil and sweet wine. But beneath, a monster stirred. Pressure built in hidden chambers, magma pressing upward, gases forcing cracks in the rock. The mountain was alive, but the people above were deaf to its heartbeat. Life returned to normal, or so it seemed. Markets opened, gladiators fought in the arena, festivals honored the gods. No one connected the trembling ground, the restless animals, the poisoned wells. They were pieces of a puzzle no one dared to assemble. For years, Pompeii lived with these warnings, blind to the truth. And so, when the mountain finally roared awake in 79 AD, it was not sudden. It was the final act of a drama that had been building for decades. A story written beneath their very feet while they danced, prayed, and dreamed, never realizing the stage itself was cracking open. On the morning of August 24, 79 AD, Pompeii awoke to a sky as bright and blue as any summer day. Merchants opened their stalls, bakers lit their ovens, children chased dogs through the cobbled streets. The shadow of Vesuvius loomed over the city, but to its people it was a silent guardian. They had no idea it was about to turn executioner. Shortly after midday, a sound shattered the calm, a roar so deep, so unnatural, that the ground itself seemed to tremble with fear. At first, people thought it was an earthquake, one of many they had endured. But this was different. Vesuvius split open with a deafening explosion. A column of ash, smoke, and fire shot nearly 20 miles into the sky. Ancient writers said it resembled a pine tree, a tall trunk with branches spreading wide. The heavens themselves seemed to ignite. Panic spread instantly. Some fled their homes, clutching children and valuables. Others froze, transfixed by the sight of the mountain vomiting fire into the heavens. Priests rushed to temples, crying out to Jupiter, to Neptune, to any god who would listen. Then came the first rain, not of water, but of stone. Pumice, light but deadly, fell from the sky. At first it was harmless, bouncing off roofs and streets. Children even tried to catch it. But soon the sky grew thick, the air choking with ash. Roofs buckled under the weight. Those who stayed indoors found their homes collapsing above them. Hours passed. The city was plunged into darkness, darker than night. Torches barely lit the streets. The air grew hot, thick, unbreathable. People tied cloth over their faces, desperate for clean air. Mothers clutched babies. The elderly were carried on backs. Families stumbled blindly through streets they had walked 1,000 times, now alien under the storm of fire. And then came the most terrifying phase, the pyroclastic surges. Rivers of fire, ash, and toxic gas tore down the mountain at unimaginable speed. They weren't flames in the way we think of fire. They were walls of death, hotter than any furnace, moving faster than a horse could run. The first surge smothered Herculaneum, turning bodies into shadows on walls. Hours later, more surges thundered toward Pompeii. Anyone still in the city had no chance. Some tried to flee through the gates, but the darkness, the choking air, and the collapsing buildings trapped them. We know their final moments because their bodies still lie where they fell. A woman shielding her child, a man covering his face, families huddled together in desperate embrace. In an instant, flesh was burned away, lungs filled with fire, and silence fell over Pompeii. By the morning of August 25th, the city was gone. Buried under nearly 20 feet of ash and stone, Pompeii had been erased from the map. Only Vesuvius remained, calm again, its fury spent, as if mocking the world for daring to forget its power. When Vesuvius finally fell silent, it left nothing but desolation. For 2 whole days, the mountain raged and roared, burying Pompeii and its neighbors beneath a suffocating blanket of ash. And then, silence. The survivors who escaped dared not return. To them, the land was cursed. The once bustling city had become a tomb. For centuries, Pompeii lay forgotten, erased from memory, a ghost beneath the earth, but history has a strange way of preserving its darkest secrets. In the 16th century, workers digging a canal stumbled upon ancient walls and painted frescoes. They didn't realize what they had found. Some even thought it was a villa destroyed by time. But in 1748, systematic excavations began. What they uncovered stunned the world. Pompeii wasn't just ruins, it was a city frozen at the very moment of death. Streets still paved with stone, shops still stocked with goods, loaves of bread, carbonized but intact, still sat in ovens as if waiting for their owners to return. Even graffiti covered the walls, jokes, political slogans, declarations of love, all whispering voices from a silenced past. And then there were the bodies. Archaeologists discovered cavities in the hardened ash, empty spaces where once living bodies had lain. They realized these voids were left by the decay of human flesh. Into these spaces, they poured plaster. And when the plaster hardened, there they were, the final agonizing moments of Pompeii's people. A mother curled around her child as if her embrace could protect against fire. A dog chained to a wall, contorted in its final desperate struggle. Entire families huddled together, their faces frozen in horror. These plaster casts were not statues. They were real people, captured in death, speaking across nearly 2,000 years. Every excavation revealed more of daily life. A tavern with painted menus on the wall. A brothel with frescoes advertising its services. An amphitheater where gladiators once fought. Frescoes in villas showed gods, lovers, myths, and sometimes the simple pleasures of food and wine. And yet, amid the wonder, there was tragedy. For each discovery was a reminder that these people had no warning, no chance. Their laughter, their loves, their ambitions, all buried in an instant. The city is both a marvel and a grave. Today, walking through Pompeii is unlike any other place on Earth. You step across stone streets still marked by the ruts of Roman carts. You pass through homes where murals glow with ancient colors. And always, looming in the distance, is Vesuvius, silent, yes, but never asleep. Scientists know it will erupt again. The question is not if, but when. Pompeii is more than ruins. It is a message, a reminder that life, no matter how strong or sophisticated, can vanish in a single day. That nature, for all our power, is still master, and that sometimes the dead speak louder than the living. Pompeii did not simply vanish beneath the ash, it was preserved like a message in a bottle cast forward through time. And when the world finally uncovered it, that message was clear. Civilizations are fragile, and nature always has the last word. The rediscovery of Pompeii in the 18th century came at a moment when Europe was obsessed with the past. Kings, scholars, and artists flocked to see the ruins. For them, Pompeii was not just a curiosity, it was a revelation. Here was a city where the ancient world lived again. Not in dusty scrolls or faded legends, but in painted walls, tiled floors, even in the frozen gestures of its people. The impact was immense. Writers described Pompeii as a window into Roman daily life. Architects copied its villas, its columns, its mosaics. Fashion was inspired by the styles seen in frescoes. Even politics was influenced. Leaders saw in Pompeii a mirror of empire, a reminder that greatness could vanish overnight. But perhaps the most haunting legacy is the human one. Those plaster casts, those faces twisted in agony, are unlike anything else in history. They force us to confront the truth that history is not abstract. It is flesh and blood. These were people with dreams, fears, and laughter, just like us. And in a single day, all of it was gone. Scientists, too, have learned from Pompeii. The eruption of Vesuvius became a textbook case for volcanology. It taught us how pyroclastic flows work, how ash preserves organic material, how entire ecosystems can be destroyed and yet fossilized in an instant. Each layer of ash is a chapter in a geological diary, telling us not just about the past, but about the dangers we still face. Because Vesuvius is not dead. It still broods over the Bay of Naples, where more than 3 million people live today. Experts warn that another eruption on the scale of 79 AD would be catastrophic. The lesson of Pompeii is not just history, it is a warning written in fire and ash. And yet, the ruins are also strangely beautiful. The streets echo with silence, but also with stories. The villas, though broken, still glow with color. Tourists walk the same paths once tread by Roman citizens. Children run through the same amphitheater where gladiators once fought. Life, in a way, has returned. Pompeii's legacy is twofold. It reminds us of our vulnerability, but also of our resilience. Out of tragedy came knowledge, out of death came understanding, and out of silence came a voice that still speaks to us nearly 2,000 years later. So when we look at Pompeii, we are not just looking at ruins, we are looking at ourselves, our cities, our ambitions, our illusions of permanence, and we are reminded that one day we too will be the past someone else uncovers. What will they say about us? Pompeii's story is not just about the past, it's about us. A city that laughed, loved, and dreamed, erased in a single day. When we walk its streets today, we don't just see ruins. We see the faces of people who remind us that life is fragile, but memory endures. And maybe that's why Pompeii still fascinates us, because it asks the question we can't escape. If tomorrow never came, what would remain of us? Tell me, what struck you the most about Pompeii's story? The final moments of its people, the ruins frozen in time, or the warning it holds for our own world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more hidden chapters of history, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell, so you never miss the next story from the ancient world. This has been Apocalypse. Thank you for watching.